Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Today we are going to learn about the physiology of cranial nerves. Cranial nerves are the nerves which arise from brain, while the spinal nerves are the nerves which arise from the spinal cord. There are 12 pairs of cranial nerves and 31 pairs of spinal nerves. In today's lecture, we are going to learn about the cranial nerves, the nerves which arise from brain. In this slide, we can see that two nerves arise from the forebrain. Two cranial nerves arise from the midbrain, two cranial nerves from the pons, and six cranial nerves arise from the medulla oblongata. Now going to discuss all the cranial nerves. In this slide, we can see the three cranial nerves. The two cranial nerves arise from the brain, from the forebrain, you can see, and the third one arises from the midbrain. The nerve one is the olfactory nerve, which is responsible for the transfer of olfactory information from the nose to the olfactory cortex. Actually, the receptor of the nerve 1 is present inside the nose or the epithelium of the nose. So, from the nose, the sensory information of the smell is transferred toward the nerve 1, and this nerve 1 is over here in the form of bulb, and this nerve 1 transfer the information to the olfactory cortex, which is present in the temporal lobe of the cerebral cortex. So the nerve 1 is olfactory nerve, and olfactory nerve is responsible for the detection of smell or to transfer the information of smell to the olfactory cortex, and this is sensory nerve. The nerve 2. The nerve 2 is the optic nerve, which is represented by red line over here, and the nerve 2 is responsible to transfer the visual information from the photoreceptors of the eye to the visual cortex of the occipital lobe of the cerebral cortex. So this is the optic nerve, and this optic nerve is responsible for the transfer of visual information, or this is responsible for vision, and this is also what this is also sensory nerve. Now coming towards the next slide, this is the nerve 3. This is called oculomotor nerve. This is actually a motor nerve, and this arises from the midbrain. This is motor as well as parasympathetic nerve. I'm going to show you that this provide the motor information to the superior rectus muscle of the eye and the inferior rectus muscle of the eye, and it also provide the parasympathetic information to the iris and to the ciliary muscles of the eye. I'm going to show you in the next slide. In this slide, you can see that this superior rectus muscle of the eyeball, this is innervated by the oculomotor nerve. This is the inferior rectus muscle. This inferior rectus muscle of the eyeball is also innervated by the oculomotor nerve. Similarly, the iris and the ciliary muscles are also provided by the oculomotor nerve. In this slide, we can see that this is the iris, and this circular portion of the iris represent the circular smooth muscles of the iris, which are responsible for the constriction of pupil. So this circular smooth muscles of the iris is provided by the parasympathetic branch of the oculomotor nerve. Similarly, the this is the ciliary muscle. The ciliary muscle of the eye, which is present near the ciliary body of the eye. This is also provided by the parasympathetic branch of the oculomotor nerve, and this muscle is responsible for the convexity or for the concavity of the lens of the eyeball. I'm going to write it: oculomotor nerve. This is actually motor nerve plus parasympathetic nerve. Now coming towards the next one. In this slide, we can see the nerve 4. This is the nerve 4. The nerve 4 is called trochlear nerve. This nerve is provided to the oblique muscle of the eyeball. The oblique muscle of the eyeball is attached with the trochlea of the eye. That is why this nerve is called trochlear nerve. So this oblique muscle is responsible for the oblique motion of the eyeball. I am going to show you this. This is the trochlea. This is a cartilaginous structure called trochlea, and this oblique muscle is attached with the trochlea, and this muscle is provided by the trochlear nerve because of the presence of trochlea over here, and this oblique muscle is responsible for the oblique movement of the eyeball. Nerve 4 is the trochlear nerve, and this nerve is also a motor nerve. Now coming towards the next one, nerve 5. This is nerve 5. Nerve 5 is called trigeminal nerve. Trigeminal nerve arises from the pons. The previous one arises from the midbrain, but this one arises from the pons. This is having three sensory branches. This sensory branch of the trigeminal nerve get the sensory information from the lower eyelid, from the proximity of the nose, and from some part of the face. This get the sensory information from the upper jaw, from the teeth, and from the upper lip. This get the sensory information from the lower jaw, from the lower lips, and from proximity. Similarly, this is the motor fiber. This is the motor branch of the trigeminal nerve, and this muscle is provided to the chewing muscles of the, this nerve is provided to chewing muscles of the oral cavity, and this nerve is provided to the tensor tympani muscle. I'm going to show you. This is the tensor tympani muscle inside the middle ear, which is attached with the malleus of the ossicle. This is the malleus, and this is attached with the tensor tympani, and tensor tympani is provided by the trigeminal motor nerve, and this muscle get contracted when there is very loud voice which strike with the tympanic membrane of the ear. So this tensor tympani is provided by the trigeminal nerve. Trigeminal nerve, and this trigeminal nerve is mixed nerve. Mixed means sensory and motor. Now coming towards the next one. This slide show another nerve which arises from the pons, and this is also a motor nerve. This is nerve 6, which is called abducent nerve, and this nerve is provided to the lateral rectus muscle of the eye. I'm going to show you the muscle to which this is the lateral rectus muscle of the eyeball, which is provided by the abducent muscle, and this muscle is responsible for the lateral motion of the eyeball. I'm going to show you this motion. This movement of the eyeball, this lateral abduction of the eyeball, is carried out by the help of this abducent nerve. I'm going to write it. Nerve 6 is abducent nerve, and this abducent nerve is motor nerve. Now coming towards the next one. This is the nerve 7. Nerve 7 is the facial nerve, and this facial nerve is also a mixed nerve. This nerve is mixed nerve as well as the parasympathetic nerve. The facial nerve get the sensory information from major part of the face and from scalp and temporal area. This also get the sensory information from the anterior part of the tongue, that is regarding the taste. It get the taste sensation from the anterior part of the tongue. It provides the parasympathetic information to the salivary gland. The two types of salivary gland are innervated by the parasympathetic branch of the facial nerve, and the salivary gland which are provided by the facial nerve are the sublingual salivary gland and submandibular salivary gland. The facial nerve also provide the motor information to major part of the face. It also provide the motor information to the temporal area and to the scalp area. and it also provide the motor information to the stapedius muscle, one of the smallest muscle in the body. I'm going to show you. This is the stapedius muscle, which is attached with the steps of the ossicle, and this stapedius muscle is innervated by the facial nerve. I'm going to write it. The facial nerve. The facial nerve is mixed nerve plus parasympathetic nerve. So the facial nerve was the mixed nerve, motor nerve, the sensory nerve, and the parasympathetic, because it provides the parasympathetic sensations to the salivary gland. Now coming toward the next one. The nerve 8 or vestibulocochlear nerve. This is responsible for listening and for equilibrium. It means that the nerve 8 is responsible for the transfer of auditory information to the auditory cortex in the temporal lobe of the cerebral cortex, and the equilibrium information to the cerebellum. The equilibrium information is transferred from the vestibular apparatus of the ear. This is the vestibular apparatus. From the vestibular apparatus, the vestibular nerve arise, and from the cochlear nerves arise. Both of these combine together and form the vestibulocochlear nerve. This vestibulocochlear nerve crosses the internal acoustic meatus and goes toward the medulla, and through the medulla it provides the sensory information towards the auditory cortex and toward the cerebellum. So this is a sensory nerve, and this is responsible for audition or for auditory sensation and for equilibrium. Nerve 8 is vestibulocochlear nerve, and this vestibulocochlear nerve is a sensory nerve. Now coming toward the next one. This is the nerve 9. I'm going to magnify it. The nerve 9 is the glossopharyngeal nerve. As the name indicates, the glosso is for tongue and pharyngeal is for pharynx. So it gets the sensory information from the posterior part of the tongue, that is regarding the taste. It gets the taste sensation from the posterior part of the tongue, and it gives the motor sensation to some muscles inside the pharynx. That is why this is called. The glossopharyngeal nerve is also responsible for the transfer of sensory information from the chemoreceptor and baroreceptor from the carotid artery. The chemoreceptors and baroreceptors are present on the carotid artery. So from the carotid artery, that get the information from the chemoreceptor and from the baroreceptor, that is for pressure, and that is transferred toward the medulla oblongata. Similarly, as far as the parasympathetic nerve is concerned, this is the parasympathetic branch of the nerve 9 or the glossopharyngeal nerve. This parasympathetic nerve is responsible for the innervation of parotid salivary gland. Parotid salivary gland is the largest salivary gland which produces the largest amount of saliva inside the oral cavity. I'm going to write it. Glossopharyngeal nerve, and glossopharyngeal nerve is a mixed type of nerve, and this is a mixed type of nerve because this glossopharyngeal nerve provide the motor information to some muscles of the pharynx. This get the sensory information from the chemoreceptor and baroreceptor. It also get the sensory information from this posterior tongue, and this provide the parasympathetic information to the parotid salivary gland. That is why this is mixed glossopharyngeal nerve plus parasympathetic nerve. Now coming towards the next one. This slide represents the nerve 10. The nerve 10 is called vagus nerve. Vagus nerve is the vast nerve of the body. The major part of the vagus nerve provide the parasympathetic information to the heart, to the GI tract, to the liver, and to the lungs. The parasympathetic innervation play a vital role in the digestion, in the heartbeat, in the respiration. So this is widely distributed through all these systems inside the thorax, inside the abdomen, and the sensory nerve also get the information from the chemoreceptors and the baroreceptor of the aorta. The sensory nerve get this information or sensory information from the chemoreceptor and baroreceptor of the aorta. This is also branch of the vagal nerve. Similarly, the motor nerve provide motor information to the pharynx and larynx, which help in solving of food. So the nerve 10 is the vagus nerve. I'm going to write it, the vagus nerve. And the vagus nerve is a mixed type of nerve, because and the major part of the vagus nerve is provided to the parasympathetic nervous system, to the thorax and to the abdomen. One very important thing which should be remembered, that the nerve 10 also get the taste sensation from the taste buds which are present inside the pharynx. In the pharynx and some part of the esophagus, some the taste receptors are there, from which the nerve 10 is responsible for the transfer of information to the gustatory nucleus. Now coming towards the next one. The next one is the accessory nerve. In this slide, we can see the accessory nerve. This is the accessory nerve. This nerve is supplied to muscle. This is totally motor nerve, and this is supplied to two types of nerve. I'm going to show you that this nerve arises from the medulla oblongata, but one branch of this nerve goes to the spinal cord, also to the cervical region of the spinal cord. So this is considered as the cranial nerve, and this cranial nerve provides the motor information to the two types of muscles. The sternocleidomastoid muscle, this is the sternocleidomastoid muscle, and uh, this is the trapezius muscle. The sternocleidomastoid muscle is called sternocleidomastoid muscle because this is connected with the sternum, with the clavicle, and with the mastoid process. That is why this is called sternocleidomastoid muscle. I am going to show you somewhere. This is the sternocleidomastoid muscle. This is connected with the sternum, with the clavicle, and with the mastoid process. Not exactly with the mastoid process, but near the mastoid process to the temporal bone that is connected. That is why this is called sternocleidomastoid muscle, and this is innervated by the accessory nerve. Now coming toward the next one, this is the trapezius muscle. This is the trapezius muscle, which ranges from the that is connected with the temporal bone, and it goes towards the thoracic vertebrae. So this make a trapeze-like structure. I'm going to show you what is trapeze. Trapeze is, this is trapeze. This represent the trapeze. So this muscle represent the trapeze-like structure, the trapeze like the swing like structure. That is why this is called trapezius muscle, and this trapezius muscle is also provided by the accessory nerve, or the nerve 11. Nerve 11 is accessory nerve, and this accessory nerve is motor nerve. The last one is the hypoglossal nerve. The hypoglossal nerve is also a motor nerve. Hypo mean below and the glossal mean tongue. So this arises from the lower part of the tongue. That is why this is called hypoglossal nerve, and this is responsible for talking. This is actually provided to the muscles of the tongue. So this help in the talking. This get the sensory. This get the motor information from the brain to the tongue for talking from the Broca's area. And but this actually this nerve also goes to the medulla oblongata.